Welcome to Sports Management Podcast, where you will hear interesting sports management professionals share their stories, experiences, and passion for the sports management industry. I am your host, Marcus Philipsson. Today's guest is Nicklas Persson, the co-founder and board member of SPO, Swedish Padel Open. SPO is the license holder of World Padel Tour events in Sweden, and there will be 2 such events in 2022. The first one takes place in Stockholm between September 14th and 18th, and the other one will be held in Malmö in November. Nicklas is a true padel enthusiast, and he, together with his partner Urban, has done a lot for Swedish Padel. Get ready to learn about event management in sports, if the interest for padel is declining or not, how padel can be a great tool for networking, how it is like organizing large sporting events, and much more. Nicklas Persson, welcome to Sports Management Podcast.
Thank you so much.
How are you doing today?
Very good, thank you.
You are the board member of Swedish Padel Open, which when this podcast will be released will be just a couple of days away from your event in Stockholm. So can you tell us first a little bit about your role and then about the event?
Yeah, first of all, I'm one of the founders of the Swedish Padel Open, together with my colleague and partner Urban Johansson. And since about 1 year ago, we joined forces with the Led Up group. So they are the majority shareholders today, but we're still very active in the company, of course. And that said, I can say that we are looking forward to the tournament in September in Avicii Arena very much. First time World Padel Tour will be hosted in Stockholm, so very excited about that.
I understand that, and but it's not the first time in Sweden, right? It has been, I think, in Malmö before.
Yeah, it's actually we started in 2018 in Båstad. So we hosted the first tournament, the World Padel Tour in Sweden, in Båstad, in the tennis metropole Båstad, actually. So that was the first time in summer, an outdoor tournament. Yeah, and that was followed up with a new tournament in Båstad, the 2019. And then we planned for Malmö Arena in 2020. And as everybody knows, that couldn't happen. So that was the first year, 2021. We hosted it in Malmö. And it will be hosted again in Malmö in November this year.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's in September and in November.
Yeah. So we will have 2 open tournaments in Sweden for the first time ever.
That's fantastic.
In 1 year. Yeah.
That's great. Yeah, so you work for Swedish Padel Open, and we also have World Padel Tour. So what is the cooperation between these 2 organizations?
We are the license holder of World Padel Tour tournaments in Sweden. So World Padel Tour they have all the rights and all the players, and we have the license for hosting events in Sweden together with World Padel Tour.
Okay, so then you have a set of rules that you need to follow that they have told you?
Yeah, there is a code of conduct, of course, and how tournaments should be set up. And then, of course, you have some way to handle local things in Sweden, and the same goes for Denmark and Finland and other countries. But the code of conduct you need to practice.
What are some local differences between Spain and Sweden, then, for example, that you need to take into consideration?
It could be sponsorships, of course. More local sponsors will be attracted to sponsor a Swedish tournament than a Spanish tournament, so that we can handle, of course. And then the qualification tournament before the real tournament, there is some difference in that, of course, as well. Especially there will be a lot of local players in every country because it's very expensive for the players to travel, and then you will attract more local players in each and every country. So that's the main difference, I could say.
When we record this, we are a little over 2 weeks away from the tournament in Stockholm. So looking at your role, what are you doing now and up until the event?
My role is I'm not that operative in the organization anymore, but I of course work with different sponsors and sell sponsorships and hospitality solutions and everything. And there is a lot of things and moving targets in event organizations. So and we are a pretty small organization helping each other out. So the big thing is actually the production department to produce this huge event in a huge arena with everything from setting up the qualification tournament to build courts in Avicii Arena, to build VIP stands, and everything should be in a very nice package, so to speak. So it's a lot of things going on around that, and of course the organization helps out, and me too.
How does it look for so far with the spectators and fans, the interest, and many book tickets?
I don't have the actual number right now, but I think it's sold about 6,000-7,000 tickets already. And according to Avicii Arena, they are the experts in this. They usually the last week before happening or event, the ticket sales are usually boost. So we hope for that, of course. And we have 5 days with the world best players in place in Stockholm in a fantastic venue. So I think it will be Friday, Saturday, and Sunday. That will be a full house, I think. And I really, really hope that we can fill the arena on Wednesday, because that's when all the Swedish player enters the tournament. So we have 4 wild cards for the ladies and 4 for Swedish men as well. So I really hope that people will come to see these matches and support our players.
I hope so too. You mentioned that from the Swedish Padel Open that the LEDAP is majority owner, and the previous guest we have had, Hernan Auguste, is now working there. So how was the acquisition process, and what led you to cooperate with LEDAP?
Yeah, it was really a mean and lean process, you could say. LEDAP started to acquire different clubs in Sweden and in Europe as well, and have a very interesting vision and a strategy to consolidate the paddle clubs in different countries. And with that said, they also need some top-notch tournaments to add to their portfolio, to attract players, to attract coaches, and to attract members, of course, as well. So this was a natural step for LEDAP, I think, to join forces with the biggest and the international tournament with Swedish Padel Open in Sweden. So I think it's both a strategy for them to be in the market, to market the clubs and tournaments with Swedish Padel Open. And it's an exceptional platform to meet and greet business and pleasure at the same time. So with the tournament, you gather 25,000 paddle nerds or geeks, if you so on, and that's your customers, so to speak. So I think that's the reason why. And for us, it's perfect to get some more resources and muscles to continue to develop the tournament, because I think in the future you for sure will need more resources, both financially and organizational, to be able to develop an international tour.
Yeah, speaking of paddle in general, like at least in the Nordic countries, the boom during COVID was extreme, and the number of courts skyrocketed and the number of active players and everything just was straight up. Now it's been on a bit of a decline, I think at least. So how do you see the future of paddle in general, and then, I mean, also for SPO?
Declining is not true.
Okay.
The declining is in paddle courts, but not in players and not in booked played hours. It's still growing with players and still growing with booked hours, but there are too many courts in Sweden right now. And this is exactly the same thing that happened in Spain in the 90s. And it's exactly the same thing that happened in Sweden during the tennis boom in the 80s. So in the tennis boom, I think there was about 4,000 tennis courts in Sweden. Today, there are around 3,000. And same is for paddle courts. It's 4,000 paddle courts today, but there is room for maybe 3,000, I think. So the interest is still growing, but it's leveling out, of course, because we're not that many people in Sweden. But I think the courts will continue to decline to a level where it makes sense.
Do you think that there were too many actors that tried to grab a piece of the pie of paddle during the hype that now cannot maintain?
Yeah, absolutely. That's the thing. So a lot of gold diggers trying to make some money on that, and some of them are very successful. But the market is leveling out, I think, now, and the clubs with best situation and best facilities and best offer for the customers, and the placing of the clubs is very, very important as well. So if you have a great place, you will continue to grow your paddle community there and attract others that needs to close down. It's a natural process.
Yeah, I agree. And I think also that the paddle customer, if you want to call them that, the players also demand a little bit more. Like there were a lot of courts that were just, an old warehouse that had a couple of courts and they didn't have anything else. They barely had any staff. Nowadays you expect more. You want maybe some type of lounge area. You want a shop. You want to have, maybe a coffee there. So I think that the courts that invested a little bit more and also, of course, location is important. But I think those are the ones that might survive, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And some business lounge and maybe co-working spaces and so on. I think that's the thing going forward. If you can offer that, then I think you have a great business in paddle.
If we look more on the professional level, the top 100 players, both on the men's and women's side, are mostly Spanish. Some people from Argentina, but from mostly Spain. And Sweden hasn't been able to compete. Now we are starting to break into the top 100 on both the women's and the men's side. So how do you see the development of Swedish players internationally? And when do you think that Swedish players will be able to really compete for the top positions?
Yeah, it's a very interesting question and very difficult to answer. But in my opinion, I think the Swedish players today is doing a really great job, I think. And they're struggling in all and every tournaments all over the world and investing a lot of money from themselves and their sponsors and time and efforts, of course. However, I think the gap is too big to cover in this generation to get to the top 20 or top 25 maybe. I think that gap is too big to cover with this generation players. But the next generation, and I heard from Hernan, as you mentioned before, he'd been to the SPT tournament in Stockholm last weekend, and he saw some 13-year-old guys playing paddle, and he was really impressed about the quality for those players. So I think if we can give us some time and the proper training and coaching, I think that generation will for sure be competing on top 20 places. So
it's an interesting future and to follow them.
Yeah, hopefully. And that is combined with the clubs that they invest in the youth, in the younger kids and set up training sessions and everything. But that is actually happening now in Sweden. So I hope that development will continue. Otherwise, it will be only old guys playing paddle, and that's not that fun.
That's true. Is that something that also the paddle clubs are focusing on? I mean, youth development and how to attract more young people into the sport. Is that something that you have been involved with or have seen?
Yeah, I've been involved with it, and I am involved in it. And you could say that the Padel Federation in Sweden has been very active to attract the kids to play paddle. And then, given the new situation where the club owners need to increase the utilization of the facilities, this is a very interesting customer group to them, so to speak. And that is a good thing, I think, because then we invest in the kids, and that will all in the paddle community be gaining from, so to speak. So that said, my role in that is a very small role, but I'm involved in a company called Bull Padel as well. And we have sponsored a new tournament for the younger kids in Sweden. So it's, if you remember or you know about the Kalle Anka Cup, setup in tennis. So Bull Padel Explosion, the tournament's name, is exactly the same. So we address all the different regions in Sweden, and they play tournaments all over Sweden during the year. And in the summertime, this summer, the national finals is held in Båstad during summertime. Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
This episode is sponsored by InSport Education, the online business school for sport. They offer a range of different courses, for example, Foundations of Sport Business, Private Equity in Sport, and much, much more. As a listener to this podcast, you get 10% off all of their courses using the code SPORTSMANAGEMENTPODCAST10. Click the link in the description below and sign up today. Looking at you and your career, how did you get into paddle?
I was on vacation in Mallorca and walked by a very strange, small, lookalike tennis court at a hotel. And I've never seen it before. It's about 8-9 years ago. And so I went to the reception and asked what kind of court that was and got some explanation. And then the day after, I rented some rackets and balls and tried it out. And didn't fancy that much at that time because I played tennis. But a couple of years later in Sweden, I tried it again and then I was hooked. So that's the beginning for me.
From being hooked to the playing to, organize events and everything, how has the journey been?
Yeah, it's been sliding doors, I could say. And the involvement in the tournament, Swedish Padel Open, was also connected to Mallorca. Actually, I was on vacation in Mallorca and I got a call from a friend. And he said to me that they had the possibility to attract a World Padel Tour tournament to Sweden and needed some help with investments and marketing. And asked me if I wanted to join them in their setup. And unfortunately, I said yes. So I was also saying that I can help you out and I can help you with some customers and marketing resources and so on. But I don't have the time to be operative in the organization. But that turned out that I needed to be.
You had to be. Because you also you have manager position also in the IT industry, right? So this is not the only thing you do. You are also working in IT.
Yeah, that's right. That's my real job.
That's your real job, and this is your side hustle.
Yeah, this is all passion. Paddle is all passion. So my real job is in the IT industry. I act as a CEO for AdPro.
Yeah, I saw that AdPro is also sponsoring the event there.
Yeah, it's pure passion.
It's pure passion.
But it's also business and pleasure. So it's a perfect business platform for company. You could say that the paddle audience is very active. If you compare tennis and paddle audience, you can say that in tennis, maybe 20-25% of the spectators are active tennis players. In paddle, 80-85% active tennis players. And they're in middle of their career. So it's a super platform to be visible in and to act in as a company.
Do you think paddle can act kind of what golf is now for business and networking? That you play paddle to network like a lot of companies do with golf?
It's already happening. So we're doing it and a lot of other companies are doing it. So the same thing happening in paddle. So that actually boosting the golf community as well, because golf tournaments for companies have been declining for many years, but now it's increasing again. So it's the same concept. It's very social. The paddle tournaments is a bit faster than a golf tournament, but it works out really good.
How do you think that the paddle has helped out the golf? I didn't understand the connection there.
Many of the paddle players are also golf players. And if you compare 10, 15 years ago, it was very popular to attend to company golf days and so on. But latest 5-6 years, it's been declining until after the pandemic. Now it's increasing. Yeah, I was myself attending to a golf tournament last Friday, and usually they have maybe 60 participants. Now they're 100.
It's increasing.
Yeah, I think so.
If we focus on your work with the paddle and we leave the IT for a while, has there been any bumps on the road along the way? And if so, how did you overcome them?
It's a bumpy ride, you could say. The event industry is very bumpy. And as I said before, a lot of moving targets, a lot of unknown things. And you need to learn every day, I think, to find out your way going forward. So you and the whole organization need to be very agile to handle that, I think. And how we handle that, it's different every time, but it could be small issues you need to handle in the group, and it could be big issues you need to handle in a larger group with a lot of stakeholders in that setup. And the bad thing with the paddle industry, it's a young industry and it's very immature. There is not a lot of processes and routines and lack of know-how in many aspects. That is the bad thing. The good thing is it's very driven industry that always find different new solutions to new problems. But it's very energy consuming to work in that way. So I think it needs to be more mature going forward and find the best way to handle many look-alike situations over time. So I think time will tell, and we need to learn how to handle that, both national and international.
Yeah, there have come up things along the way. I know the recent thing was that the Swedish Federation found out with the length of the rackets, and now a lot of players have issues, and they need to go back to their manufacturers, and they might be sponsored by one brand, and they don't make shorter rackets, and then they are not allowed to play. And
yeah,
I mean, these type of things, like what we in Swedish we call kid diseases. That in the beginning, that a lot of things comes up, and just how to deal with that.
Yeah, it's amazing that can happen. It's an international sport with an international federation and so on. So that shouldn't be an issue at all. But as said before, it's immature, and these kind of crazy things happen, and it will continue for a while, I think.
What would be your best advice for people who want to work in sports or maybe in events, as you do more?
Yeah, I think the best way to find out if this is an industry for you is to sign up as a volunteer to any event. It could be football, ice hockey, paddle, golf, anything. But to learn the industry is the best way to join as a volunteer and find out if this is the way you want to spend your time, working time going forward. That's actually my best advice. Then there is a lot of education. After your gymnasium, you can choose different education in sports management, and you can choose in events and tourism and everything. So event industry is like a circus community. You travel to different new locations, you set up the circus tent, and then you produce a world-class event for a couple of days, and then you take it down and move to the next location. And that is very inspiring for many people, but it is very energy consuming for other people. So you need to find out if you have the right mindset to be in that industry.
Are you working with the interns with your tournaments?
Yes, we do. We have interns from sports management educations, and we have also during the events, before the events and during the events. And then we have, I think every tournament has about 60 volunteers at least. So we are an organization about 5 persons during the whole year, but during the tournaments, we're about 150 people involved.
That's great. I think it's, as you said, internships are extremely important in the sports industry, and to get experience and also to know if this is what you actually want to do in the future.
Yeah.
Is there something I haven't asked you that you would like to mention?
I think I mentioned it before, but it's worth saying again, and that is, I hope for a lot of people, we come to Avicii Arena on Wednesday, September 14, when to cheer and support all of Swedish players. That is to support players and to Swedish Padel as well.
And if people want to purchase tickets, how do they do that?
Go to our website, and they find a link on our website to buy tickets. So SwedishPadelOpen.se.
Perfect. The last question that I ask everyone is if you could choose the next guest on this podcast, who do you think that I should talk to?
I think you should give Paquito a call, the player.
Paquito Navarro.
Yeah, exactly. That's a really funny guy. And I think he's a really good poster boy for padel, for the passion. And he is not a training product. He's a real passionate guy about padel. And I also know that he loves Sweden and the Swedish audience. And I think he would like to participate in your podcast as well.
That would be great.
Yeah. And you can say hi from me.
I will do that. Nicklas, thank you so much for taking the time to be on the Sports Management podcast, and best of luck in the upcoming events in September and November.
Thank you so much. My pleasure.
Thank you for listening to the Sports Management podcast. Please hit the subscribe button so you don't miss out on any upcoming episodes. Also, feel free to leave a comment about what you thought about this episode. If you want to get in contact with me, send an email to sportsmpodcast@gmail.com or hit me up on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram @sportmpodcast.